Welcome GRD 121 Computer Graphics to our third Photoshop Photopea exercise called Turkey Masks. And we've always done this in Photoshop, and we're going to do the same thing in Photopea online this semester. And usually we do this by Thanksgiving, but we're running a little late, so we're doing it now, but we're going to keep the same exercise. So let me just show you what this is about. Here's the exercise in Unit 14. And you'll see a bunch of files here. Now these are online, so you can copy them online or you could view them online and then download them. These you can also download. Now I was thinking you would typically download these. I forgot that when you click on these, they'll show up in your browser, but you can also right click on any of these and do save link as and download them to your computer if you want them downloaded into your computer. But before you do that, just let me remind you, we're going to bring these into one Photoshop document, and it's going to look like this when it's finished. Here's a sample, and I'll just click on it. It'll open up in a browser, and you know, it's kind of goofy, but it's got a cartoon turkey that's dancing, and it's got a shadow behind it that's kind of a cast shadow of the turkey, and then there's a real turkey and it's got a cast shadow on it. And these were both silhouetted, meaning we took away the backgrounds that they were on and we put them in this photo. And this one was pretty easy because it had a white background, so we don't have to do a mask on this one. On this turkey, the live turkey, the real turkey, I guess I call it, we'll put a mask on it so that we can kind of add things and take things away. In CSC 103, we do like a dog soccer thing where we use a mask to silhouette and to take away backgrounds. And the nice thing about a mask, as opposed to just erasing things, is if you screw it up, you can put stuff back, so it's not permanent. But it still does the same thing. It takes away the background so it looks like it's there, sort of. And then we're just going to put some text on it, just a one-word thing. We're going to use the warp feature, which is in Photopea, just like in Photoshop. We'll put a little colorization on the background, might look nice, and then we'll even put a vignette, this little soft-edged border. We'll put that on here. And this image will be 6x4. It'll be like a regular image that you get printed out at a pharmacy or Target or somewhere, or Walmart. It'll be 6x4, and it'll be 300 pixels per inch, so it'll be print ready. So that's what we'll set up. And again, this is kind of the finished example, so it's nothing really that great, but you could use this as a reference. Now I'm going to go to Photopea, and I'm actually going to start this without doing the Google Drive method. I'll just go to photopea.com. And you can do that. You don't always have to use Google Drive. Obviously, it's more convenient if you're saving there. Now, I just want to make sure that you're starting this the right way, because we're not just going to open up one of the other files. You're going to start a new file. I guess if you do it through Google Drive and you start a new file, you should actually start it without Google Drive and then download it and then reopen it from Google Drive so it's linked. But right now, I'm just going to go File New. So I guess you'd start, either way, you'd start it this way. You go to File New, and you can see these template things and stuff like this here. What you want to do is go over here and name it and just call it ps3-turkey, and you can just put your last name first initial. I'll just do that. You don't have to put turkey mask, just ps3-turkey and put your last name first initial. And we're going to make the DPI, which is actually the PPI. Photoshop calls it PPI, pixels per inch, but DPI is the same thing. You could put in 300 because we'll make it print ready. So put in 300. Now, as far as the size in pixels, don't worry about pixels right now because we didn't really set anything up yet. It's going to be a blank document. So use inches and set it up so it's 6x4, 6 wide and then 4 high. So it's going to be set up like that. So it'll be 6x4, 300 pixels per inch. And it says background white. You could leave it transparent. You could leave it white. It doesn't really matter. We're not really going to have a background. We're going to put our background picture into that. But that's all you need right now. So just name it 6x4 inches and then 300 DPI, which is also PPI. And then just hit create. And you'll just get a white blank document here that says background, which we don't even really need the background. And we're going to bring images into here. And the way you'll do that is in My Warren, there's going to be 3 images you're going to bring in. You're going to bring in the background image first, which is going to be this kind of snowfield thing. I think I called it snowfield. And there it is, snowfield right here. And it's right here as well. So either place, you can do different ways. If you download it, you could then open it into it. But here's another thing you could do. You could just click on snowfield. Click on this one up here, and then right-click on it. Well, let's see if we could copy the image. We'll try that first. Copy image, and we'll go to Photopea. We'll see if we can do edit paste. It'll just paste it right in. And that worked fine. Now, I got to zoom out because it's really big. And I'm just going to resize it a little bit. Now, if you have transform controls on, you'll see these things over here. If you ever don't see them, you could turn on transform controls, but I'm just going to resize it a little bit. And I'm going to hold shift so it stays in proportion. I'll just move it to about there. And I'll move it up a little bit so I see a little bit more of the foreground. It's not perfect for that size, the 6x4, but if you cut off a little on the top and bottom, that's fine. So that's all I'm going to do there, and I'll hit enter. And you could even name this, snowfield or something. You could double click on that layer, name it snowfield. So that's one way to bring something in. Another thing you can do, I'll just show you different methods here. So that obviously worked fine of doing that. Another thing you could do, if you downloaded Turkey Reel, let's just say I downloaded Turkey Reel, and I did save link as, and I downloaded it to my computer, and I just put it on my desktop for right now. I'll just do that. And there, it downloaded it to my desktop. Another thing you could do is you could go here and say File Open in Place and place it in. And I just want to show you all these different scenarios because different things happen. If you open in place and then you go to your desktop and wherever you downloaded it to, whatever that thing's called, turkeyreel.jpg, there it is. And there it is. And you can see it has the border around it. So I'll just I'll resize it just a little bit. Matter of fact, I'll zoom in to see this a little bit better. And I'll just resize it a little bit. Now, don't worry about making the turkey as small as it's going to be because we have to still silhouette around it. So keep it on the bigger side. We could always scale it later. And you could drag it and move it around. Now, after you resize something, typically you have to hit enter to kind of okay it. And then another thing, if you ever see this little icon here, that means it's a smart layer. And it does that when they place them rather than pasting them like we did with this one. So you could always right click on here and just say rasterize. Just choose rasterize. We don't need a smart layer right now. That's all you have to do with Turkey Reel. And notice that when you place it, it actually came in and it brought the name in. You don't have to change the name. So that's another option to do. Another option, let's see if we could try one more option here. We'll keep our sample open here. And I have to bring in Turkey Cartoon. And another option is if you right click on this and you say copy image address, and then if we go file, open from URL, and I'll paste in that address. So I'll just paste it. There's that turkey cartoon. Now it says place into, you could choose new project or the current project. Now obviously we want to place it into the current project. That's the whole idea. So you have to click on there and choose current project. And then you could hit OK. So there's a number of options to get pictures in here. You can always get them in. You can open them up from your computer, you can copy and paste them from the web, or you can place them. That's what we're doing here. We're placing it from the web, hitting OK, and there it is. And notice that when you place them, they have that little icon, and we should rasterize this too. And I'll make this smaller as well. I don't need it going right to the edge, so I'm going to hold Shift to keep it in proportion and move over my dancing turkey right there. And I'll hit enter. And I'll also right click and I'll rasterize. Now a couple things right now, I'll close up my downloads at the bottom so I have more room. Now right now I didn't open this from Google Drive. I don't need this turkey open, I'll close that. And I have all the images I need. So I don't really need anything over here anymore. I got everything I need. There's just 3 images, snowfield and the 2 turkeys. Now right now, if I go File, Save as Disabled, I can save as PSD and download it. And actually, that's not a bad thing to do. Whether you're going to use it in Google Drive or whether you're just going to work on it on the web, you still should download it because notice you don't have save enabled right now, but if you download it and then open it again, you'll have save enabled, at least for your session that you're working on. And then also you'd need to download it if you want to drag it into your Google Drive. So you could do that as well. So whatever you choose to do. I'm going to try to do it without Google Drive just to try it. But if you're using Google Drive, download it, upload it into your Google Drive, and open it from there. Because there's no way to save it into Google Drive. I just want to point that out. You can't save it into Google Drive if you didn't open it from Google Drive. It has to be connected when you start the file. You can't just save different files into Google Drive. It doesn't work like that. So I'm going to do File, Save as PSD, and it'll save everything I did so far. It'll at least have my layers here. And there it is. And that's in my downloads right now. And then I'm going to close this. And I'm going to close this. I'm not going to open it from downloads because who knows how it's going to open up. It'll probably open up in Photoshop because I do have Photoshop here. All right, so I'm going to close this. I thought I closed it. Now it's closed. Now, again, options you could do wherever it is in your downloads because it always goes to your downloads. And here's sample. Here's the one I just made. This is an older one, the sample. This is the one I just made. Now you can upload this to Google Drive if you want. And then double click on it in Google Drive and work from there. Now I'm going to try something else. I'm just going to go here and open it again, I'm going to go File, Open, and I'm going to go to my downloads for no date for some reason in my downloads. But I'm going to use this one, the ps3 Turkey, and open that up. And now you'll have save available. And also, here's something else that I realized too, that you can publish online to photopea.com and it'll create a PSD file with a URL. That's how I shared files with you. So it's pretty interesting that they don't promote that they give you cloud space, but if you do that, it's actually saved in the cloud and you can get it from a private URL, you know, if you just remember what it is or you copy and paste it somewhere. So if you ever need to share a file with me and you don't have it in Google Drive, you could always just publish it online and send that URL to me. All right, so anyway, I'll try to do this without Google Drive, but you should probably drag it to Google Drive and then open it from there. But I'm going to try and do it this way, just in case there's people out there not using Google Drive. All right, and it even, when I do save, it even says we'll be able to edit this until you close all tabs. Now keep in mind, if your internet goes out or something happens, you know, it's always a little bit more risky doing it this way because it's not saving as much as it does from Google Drive. But I'll try it like this. I did it before. I did the sample one like that, so we'll see what happens here. So I'll try to run through this quicker, and I'm not going to be able to do it in one video. But we got Turkey Cartoon, we got Turkey Real, and we have the background here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off Turkey Real, the visibility. And again, if you don't see handles on here, you could turn them off if they're bothering you, but that's transform controls. That means you could always kind of grab on it. As long as you have your move tool here, you could always drag it around. And if you ever need more space, you can close this thing up as you're working on it. If you don't need your layers there. I don't think it gives you a lot of options as far as making it. Oh yeah, it does. You can make it a little bit narrower. So I'll just do that. And what I'm going to do is get rid of the background, this white background. And the nice thing is that it's white. It's real easy to get rid of. So we're going to show using a layer mask or a raster mask, as they call it in Photopea. And I'm just going to use the magic wand here and we'll delete it because we're not really going to have to make edits to our mask. It's pretty much either it's white or it shouldn't be there. So that's all we're going to do. So we're going to use the old-fashioned method of going under here. If you hold down, you'll see the magic wand. Now, the only thing with the magic wand from Photoshop to here is that it doesn't show you a magic wand. Your cursor just stays an arrow. You don't see the magic wand cursor, but you're actually using that tool. And also, contiguous means when this is checked, it means it'll only select areas that are connected. So if there's not a break there, kind of like water leaking out, if it's not leaking out, it won't connect it. So there'll be areas that are kind of trapped. That's okay. We'll just do those one at a time. But I would just leave it on contiguous so you could just do the areas at once so it doesn't go all over your image. So again, without our magic wand cursor, I guess, showing here, and making sure you're on Turkey Cartoon layer, I'm just going to click here. Now, they do have a tolerance. You could change the tolerance. It's at 16 now. Maybe by default it might be at 64, but let me leave it on 16. I'll just click here. And again, I'll zoom in because the one thing with this is they don't make the selections easy to see. And when I'm trying to record videos, it's really hard to see it. But there's a selection here that's a little dotted line going around all this white stuff. Now, it's not going down here. It's just kind of doing all the upper stuff. And all I'm going to do right now is just hit my delete key and just delete everything that's selected. So what the magic wand does is it selects by color. So when I clicked on the white, I'm just going to hit delete. And there it is. It's gone. And then I could go down here and click on this part and hit delete, and it's gone. And I'll go down here. Now you can see it's not taking that light blue part, and that's okay. And I'll hit delete, and then I'll click on this part. So that's a pretty easy one to edit. Now I don't even want this blue part, so I'll click on this blue part. Now it doesn't just select white, it selects anything where there's similar color. So I'll hit delete, and then I'll click here and do delete. And then I'll do Command D, which is the same as doing select, deselect. Or I'll just do select, deselect. The only problem with that method is you have to watch for any kind of halos around here. And there's ways you can actually refine the edge. And I haven't used the refine edge much in Photopea right now. I've used it in Photoshop. But they have some options where you can kind of, close in on your selection and make it a little tighter. But that's okay for now. We're going to make the turkey smaller. So everything's gone. It's transparent. If you ever need to activate the selection, you could always, I think, command click on here and it'll activate the selection around everything that's not transparent. So I'm going to do File Save just to see how this is working here and just save what I've done. Now I don't need a selection, so I'm going to do Command D again. Now what I'm also going to do, now that I got rid of that turkey stuff, is I'm going to resize it. So I'm going to use my Move tool up here and just make it smaller so it looks more like the sample that I had. So it looks more like a you know, the typical size of a dancing turkey that you'd see in a field. And I'll move around in here. Now be careful not to grab on the middle because that's a transformation point that may change. So I'm just going to move him down here. I'll make him a little bigger. I mean, it is a cartoon turkey, so there's no real set size. So I'm going to put him here, and I'll hit enter. Typically you want to hit enter after you resize something. And then I'm going to put a drop shadow on him. Now, they have a drop shadow through your layers. If you go up here to layer and then layer style, they have a drop shadow, and you've probably used this before. And of course it goes right in front of what I'm doing. Now, you can see what the drop shadow looks like. It's kind of going in a certain direction. They have global styles. It's kind of going up and to the left. Now, you could turn that off and put this in any direction you want. It actually kind of turns, it casts the shadow in the opposite direction that you're pointing at. And I'm going to move it over there a little bit. It doesn't really matter right now. And the only options you have to think about on drop shadow are distance. You can move it further away. Now, obviously, that doesn't look real because it looks like he's in front of a screen, so we're going to have to change that a little, but you can move it a little. And then spread makes it harsher. You know, you would think spread would be softer, but it doesn't. So we're not really going to do anything with the spread right now. And then size, which you would think you would make it bigger, smaller. Size is actually the blur, which I don't know why they don't call it blur, but they don't. Size just makes it more blurry. So if you make it bigger, you almost don't see it because it gets so blurry. And the higher resolution, the more you're going to slide it. The lower resolution, you don't need as much. So I'm going to leave it like that right now. Even go down a little bit so it's a little harder edge because we're going to just have it in the snow. And you can adjust the opacity as well. Usually in the 50s is good. You don't want it any more than that. And I'm going to hit OK. Now, it's an editable effect when you do a drop shadow. When you go in here, it's editable. So you can double click on it and change it. If you didn't like the way you did it, you want to change a different direction, you want to make it more see-through, you want to change the opacity, anything you want, you can do this. These layer styles are editable just as they are in Photoshop. Very much the same thing. So I'm just going to X out of that because I'm not doing anything. But they're here, and you can even turn them off. If you're like, I don't like the drop shadow, you could turn off the effects. And you could do multiple effects. You can do, you know, outlines, and there's all kinds of things you could do in here. I haven't investigated all the ones that you could do in Photopea, but I assume they're similar to the ones in Photoshop. Sometimes you could do a bevel and emboss and put a texture on it. I don't know if they have a texture in here, but we don't need a texture on a turkey shadow, so we don't have to worry about it. So we have our drop shadow here. Now, one thing we can do that I'll point out that's kind of interesting, and you could do this in Photoshop too, except I think you can right-click and do it in Photoshop. In here, if you go to Layer and go to Layer Style, and that's where we got all these things, they have a thing called Create Layers. And you might not be aware of what that does, but what it does is it separates it from being an effect, an editable effect, and it makes it its own layer, its own shadow. Now, why would you want that? Well, maybe we want to adjust the shadow so it looks more real. Let's try that. So there it says Turkey Cartoon Shadow. It's hard to see because I covered this up, but I think it says Shadow. Turkey Cartoons Drop Shadow. Now I could see what it is right there. Now it made it a separate layer. Like here it is. There's the drop shadow. Now what you could do now, and again this is going to be hard to see because everything in Photopea is hard to see. Now what I'm going to do with the shadow, now I'm on the turkey cartoon, I'm going to click on the shadow and just squash it. And then I'm going to kind of move it over. Now you'd almost like skew it, I guess, in a way, but we could go to Edit, Transform, and go to Distort. They have warp and perspective. I'm going to go to distort. That way you can drag a corner and just like move it over. And I could drag this corner and move it over and kind of do that. Now I could kind of customize my shadow so it's not just a shadow that's going up and to the left. Now I could resize the shadow. You can't do this when it's a regular drop shadow. So you could kind of squash it. You can adjust the perspective of it. You could kind of bring the middle down. Now again, it is hard to see, but I'll just do something like that. And it looks a lot better. And I'll hit enter if I need to OK the scale, and that's it. And I'm done with the turkey cartoon and the turkey cartoon shadow. And I'll actually turn them off right now, and I'll start working on the turkey reel, and I'm going to do the same thing with a drop shadow, but we're going to use the quick selection tool, which I really struggled with in our last exercise with the guys playing chess. I really struggled with it. It was really hard to see, but I think it'll work a lot better here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. I'll save what I did, and I'm going to take a break, and For part 2, this is probably going to take 3 videos, but for part 2 of the video, I'm going to come back and work on the turkey thing. So I think I'll just take a break here because probably after all the introduction, it probably took a while. But again, we got our background here, we have our turkey shadow, and now we're going to work on the real turkey in the next part. So what you could do if you're working in Google Drive, you can obviously just save and keep working. Now, if I'm not working in Google Drive, the smart thing to always do is probably save as PSD again, except what happens when you do that, it goes into your downloads and then it puts a number 1 next to it. So what I usually like to do before I'm going to do that is I'll go into my downloads and actually throw this in the garbage or delete it, right click, delete it if you do it in Windows that way. And then I'm just going to download it again and do save as PSD. And there it is. And I could even leave it in my downloads and keep working here because that way I have kind of a protected version of it, I guess. I don't have to close it and open it up, but I'll do that. So I have a version of where I'm at saved. It's exported, it's downloaded, and I'm going to keep working. So I'll come back to part 2 and we'll keep working on our turkey mask Thanksgiving project that we're working on in December.